Chapter 3. They were still in space, but it wasn't nearly so deep now. The ship's drone had mellowed as the gravity drive slowed them to inter-system speeds. 11 days, buddy boy, and then no more of your dick in my ear for what, 72 hours? Tom grinned and shook his head. You wish. Scott raised his coffee cup in a mock toast. Here's to pretty girls and sunny days, Tommy. He sipped the watery liquid and grimaced. Nothing like a nice mug of shit to put a shine on the morning, eh? It's... Tom glanced at his terminal. 4 in the afternoon, you pig. Happy hour. Right, said Scott. Whatever. They sat in silence for a few moments. Tom worked studiously at one of his crosswords, tapping in words and erasing them at the same rate. Scott gazed into the darkness and tried to remember the words of a poem he used to know. He could probably just look it up in the ship's library, same as Tom and his puzzle, but learning how to kill time was a good trick in their line of work. Nothing to do and plenty of hours to do it. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did Gaia and something wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the something hath out grabe. 6-letter word for saint. Scott thought for a second and then smiled. Thomas. Funny. Like not wanting to fuck over all things great and small makes me some kind of prince. I mean, really. Tom paused. Hey, that's it. Prince. You're good for something after all, you pagan asshole. You still pissed about last night? Scott shook his head. It seemed that this debate would never die, but 11 days was 11 days. Like I said, survival of the fittest. The fact remains that if the human race needs to do something to survive, and the lower orders don't have the power to stop us, we'll prevail. It's not right or wrong. It's just the way things are. Tom looked up from the monitor, jaw set. So it's all right to do whatever we want, exploit any ecosystem as long as we don't run into anything big enough to kick our butts. That's basically it, right? Couldn't have put it better myself. That's opportunistic rationalization, Scott. Where's your sense of social responsibility? Didn't your mama raise you right? I was a tube child, thank you very much. Well, that must be it. Tom hit the store button on his keyboard and stood. Now, if you'd excuse me a moment, I have this sudden, overwhelming urge to take a dump. Scott chuckled. I'm not even going to touch that one. Tom slapped him on the shoulder and exited the control module. Tom was all right. He didn't take himself too seriously, at least. Scott had been paired up with worse. He felt his grin slowly melt as he turned his gaze back to the deep. Killing time, that was all. Beware the Jabberwock, my son. The jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jub-Jub bird and shun the fruminous Bandersnatch. Yeah, that was it. What, he wondered, did it mean? And why was he thinking about it now? Hiroki's face remained expressionless as Naguchi lit a cigarette at her desk and exhaled a haze of grey smoke. She knew he disapproved, but she also knew that it was not appropriate for him to speak of it. It was, after all, her office now. It was not even a habit that she was particularly attached to. But wouldn't your father be displeased, Machiko? Naguchi inhaled deeply. Hiroki uncrossed his legs on the couch and smoothed his small moustache carefully with one finger. As I was saying, Ackland expressed some concerns with the agreement. He says that he has the support of the other ranchers, or at least Harrison and Marionetti. Well, that's 3 of the big 4, Naguchi began. Perhaps we should contact the company. A small green light flashed from the control panel set into her desk, accompanied by a low tone. Excuse me, Hiroki. Of course. He picked up a sheaf of hard copy and settled back into a plush cushion. Naguchi punched up visual and hit receive. Mr. Shimura, we have an unidentified incoming at... Oh, Miss Naguchi. Naguchi smiled slightly at the young man's visible discomfort and waited. He was one of the scan watchers, a low-level company worker. I have a message for Mr. Shimura. Is he there? Naguchi frowned. Yes, he's here. But you can give me the message, Mason. She glanced at Hiroki, who made a point of being deeply engrossed in the Rinth count report he was reading. Mason swallowed. Yes, ma'am. Long range is showing a UFO. It's probably just a meteor, but it's not breaking up. It is going to hit. If it stays on its present course, it'll make planetfall about 30 clicks north of here. Open pasture. Make a boom when it lands. Any damage likely. No, it's not that big. Then don't worry about it. Naguchi stubbed her cigarette out into the pewter tray on the desk. We can investigate after the roundup. Naguchi out. The screen went black. She took a deep breath and then looked at Hiroki. He had set down the file and was watching her, face impassive as usual. At least there was no sympathy. She opened her mouth, uncertain as to what she was going to say. Their relationship had progressed to a first-name basis, but that didn't make them friends. She forced herself not to look away. I've been here nearly 6 months, Hiroki, and they still report to you. The ranchers, even the staff, treat me like a stranger. I have done all I can think of to make this job mine. Naguchi fell silent and waited. Hiroki watched her for a few seconds and then stood and faced her, hands clasped behind his back. Maybe that is your problem, Machiko. You're trying to adapt the job to you, rather than adapting yourself to it. You can't run an operation like this and hide from it at the same time, no matter how nice the office. Naguchi nodded slightly, thoughtful. This sounded like something he'd been waiting to say until asked, which made her wonder how long he'd been holding his tongue. Still, she needed an informed opinion. The ranchers respected Shimura. No, even further, they trusted him. She had not thought to find out how he had achieved their loyalty. There are only 113 civilians on Ryushi, he continued. And besides the 30 or so company staff, we are dealing with freelancers here. Not men and women who jump when the voice of the corporation speaks. They are not drones looking for advancement. They are people with children and homes. Quoting regulations will not get you very far. Naguchi felt a flash of anger, but she fought to keep it under control. What would you suggest, Hiroki? That I bake cookies and invite them on picnics? I suggest that when you ask for an opinion, you should consider the advice you receive. Hiroki picked up his sun helmet from the synth marble coffee table and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the entry controls and looked back at her. Look, I'll be around for another 2 weeks, and then you're on your own. I will do what I can to help in the meantime. He smiled a little. I think you will do fine, Machiko. She stood and nodded at him. Thank you for your assistance, Hiroki. It is nothing. Get out of the office once in a while. Get your hands dirty. He opened the door and then grinned easily. Get some rinse shit between your toes. Naguchi sat back down and rested her hands lightly on the black lacquered surface of her desk. Hiroki's words had stung a bit, but perhaps because there was some truth there. It deserved consideration. Hiroki was, after all, being promoted off of Ryushi. The ones who went up the ladder were generally not those that kept a low profile, as she had been doing. Perhaps it's time to make some of my own moves. Naguchi took another cigarette from the small silver case in her desk drawer and rolled it thoughtfully between her thumb and forefinger. What was the saying? The journey of 1,000 kilometers begins with one step. At first, there was only the vision of dark, cracked matter all around, seen through a thick cloud of oily smoke. The electronic eye scanned the pit and then looked up. With a sudden lurch, the Lou de Calais moved forward, using its segmented pincers to pull itself out of the crater. It was a large, armoured mechanism, the Lou de Calais, designed to withstand almost any type of environment so far encountered. It was actually modelled after a kind of predator discovered on Tharn, a world of dense metals and poisonous weather. Something like the hard meat, but more efficiently built. It could climb, walk, run, or dive into liquid. And while the robot crawler did not hunt as the real creature could, it served a purpose that was more important than simple survival. It was the bearer of life. Deshande switched to the Riga Kinmara, another of the round eyes that transmitted sensory information. Lu de te Calais was a joke, really, a derogatory term that was sometimes used for a female, literally child maker. Not that Deshande had ever heard the name spoken to a female's face. A warrior who would dare such would not be wise, for an insulted and angry Yautja female was not something even a not-too-wise male wanted to create. Assuming the warrior was armed and expert, it might almost be an even match. But Deshande would put his wager on the female. His most recent partner had tossed him across the room during the heat of their mating, and that had been an accident. Mating. Now there was a pleasant thought. As if in accordance with Deshande's thoughts, the heavy Deluxe ramp in the tail of the crawler lowered and the machine began its function. An egg, the beginning of the hunt, made its way gently down the plated ramp to be deposited on the dusty ground. The crawler moved slowly forward to lay another. Deshande rolled the control bar on the table in his private chamber. The front view appeared again in the oval monitor screen. The crawler went towards a high mountain of some unknown material. Perhaps the cliff was of Tajalke or compressed dust. This world was a warm place, but not as humid as some. Twin suns and no freestanding liquid in sensory range. The read on the crawler showed that there were still dozens of eggs to be set. The red lines and smudges of the counter changed with each placement. Each egg was coded and tuned to a reader that would maintain the connection even after the egg hatched and became hard meat. They would not leave the hunt until all the prey had been taken. To leave even a single one behind was criminal. Deshande had not visited this place before, although the records showed that there had been hunts here many seasons earlier. It was listed as wide and spacious, with no antagonists and many hiding places. Large four-legged creatures dwelled there naturally, ideal hosts, perfect for training. They would go in fast and dark, that was standard, but there could hardly be anything on the planet to cause them problems. It was but another dry world with little to offer, save a place to hunt. The galaxy was full of such places. A small Tare Hassan ran in front of the egg layer, dark in colour and spined like an insect of some sort. Its tail curved over its body and ended in a point, and its arms were much like the arms of the Loup de Te Calais. The crawler rolled over it, the treads crushing the tiny bug into the mottled ground. Deshande shook his head. Better it should die thus, for stupidity did not further any race, and running under tank treads was not high on the scale of cleverness. He watched as the counter ran slowly backward. They were still close to this place, this dust world, but there was still plenty of time for the hard-meat children to find hosts. The tagged babes should be drones by the ship's arrival, but there was not so much slack that they would have time to colonize. Timing was all. Deshande smiled. Part of being a leader was not to seem excited by the prospect of a training hunt. But in the privacy of his chamber, he allowed himself to feel the warmth of things to come. And somehow, this one felt different. There was an air of something. He switched the monitor off and stroked his broken tusk absently. He was too old to muddle himself with cosmic questions, but he knew the words of his ancestors. Thinde, le Hassan, alun miyinbe, bipide gakade, husu de paya. Learn the gift of all sights, or finish in the dance of fallen gods. Deshande cackled and stood up. Philosophy was not his bent. He was a warrior. Let the old ones worry about such things. He was a doer, not a thinker. It was better that way. Almost always.